Good. So we're here to talk about your fourth album, Temple of Haal, which I was
Yep.
listening to it today, and it's really cool, right?
Thank you.
I was wondering, in all these press releases, always the word old school heavy metal comes up, right? And
hmm
of course, it is old school heavy metal, but I think there's something more to it. Okay, it's you can find a bit of doom also there, right? So,
Yeah.
in regarding of genres, for you, how would you describe Temple Hall? Do you think old school heavy metal that's okay, or maybe you need to add something else when you try to describe it?
No, I mean it's fine to just call it heavy metal. I guess I understand the genre old school heavy metal. I use it a lot myself, but in some ways, to me, it's not really old school because heavy metal has always been pretty much the same for me. It's always stayed the same, so there's no reason to call it old school. Really, it's just normal heavy metal. But I would say there's a little component of me being a huge black metal fan as well,
Right.
which maybe gives it a little bit of a more darker twist sometimes, I would say.
Oh, cool. All
Yeah,
right. So, this time, this album I think is dedicated to your hometown, Bargon. I don't know if it is pronounced that way.
yeah, it's
So,
fine.
all right. So it's a place between mountains. It's twin mountains, right? And there's place a lot of folk and myths, right? So I was
hmm
wondering, would you recommend a special myth about this place, or a book maybe that talks about these myths, that connects the people who live there and the place? Somewhere to start for someone who doesn't know anything about mythology in Sweden, or in this place in particular.
That's a good question, but it's kind of hard to recommend a book. I don't think there is a book in English about this stuff.
Right.
Uh, I when you grow up here, you kind of hear these myths and legends everywhere just by word of mouth. There's not like we have a particular book that everybody has read or something. It's very much word of mouth, and the stories and the legends and the myths like changes a bit from person to person. Like I've heard that it's this way, and somebody else says no, that's wrong. This place is over here, and it's like this, and it's not really. It's not really a historical representation of anything. It's just very much folklore.
All right.
So I really can't recommend a single book to read. I guess it's a good thing to read a little bit of the old Norse mythology stories.
Right.
A lot of those are. I don't think anyone is like based around here or anything, but it's got small nuggets of goodness that also appear in the legends around this place that we wrote the album about. But that's a good thing. I mean, somebody should definitely write a book about it in English, because I've just heard it by word of mouth, and maybe just read it on some Swedish museum page and stuff like that. But that's not really available, I think, in English.
Right. Yeah, yeah, because I think, for example, the main theme seems to be these twin mountains, right? And people live in
Yeah.
between it. Actually, on the cover artwork of Temple Hall, we can see one of them, which is Hunneberg. I don't
Yeah.
know if this is one or not, that warriors that cannot die in battle and go to Valhalla, they have this
Yeah.
special place where they can jump and still go
hmm
to Valhalla, right?
Oh yeah, that's a place called Hekle Klint, and that's also a song on the album, the
Yeah.
instrumental one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's I would say that is one of the most recognizable places on these twin mountains that we're talking about. Everybody kind of knows where it is and what this was for. Um, it's not really it's not really built anything on top of there. It's not like you can find traces of it. It's just really pure folklore and myth,
Right.
I would say. Um, but it is a place that is called in Sweden, we call it an ättestupa. I don't know the English word for it, but that basically refers to a mountainside where people jumped off pretty much. If you've seen the movie Midsommar, the horror movie, you
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
know.
yeah. The
Yeah,
same
yeah,
with yeah.
yeah. It's actually very similar in appearance as well from that movie to how it looks here.
All right.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So that is pretty much the gist of it. But I don't know that there's like real archaeological finds that support this thing that this place have been used for that. But it's like everybody who lives in knows it, and it's kind of if you know it, you get a little bit of a special vibe when visiting that place, I would say. Oh, Damar guitarist, he actually lives kind of right under it, I think.
All right. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think you all are from this little town, but not all of you live there, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. We all was born there. Jukka and Adam, they lived there until they were 18 and moved away from home, basically. I lived there until I was 7 or 6, I think, and then we moved with my family. But we moved to a town that is like 10 kilometers away, so it's still in the area. But nowadays, Jukka, our drummer, he lives in Gothenburg. But me and Adam, we live on, there's 2 mountains and we live on one each, pretty much. So we have a really close connection to the place.
All right. So music-wise, if you hear, for example, the single "The Woods," you can relate. I think you can relate to the other Nekromant albums, but the rest of the album is a bit more darker. The tempos is a bit somber, but the album has a bit of everything, right? The hooks and melodies. It also has aggression. Do you think that's is something predominant on this Temple of Haal? I mean, it's something that is it's going to this direction. It's more aggressive, or it's no, it's more melodic.
It's a bit hard to like pinpoint the reason why it turned out the way it turned out, because we do everything kind of natural, we don't premeditate things very much. We don't sit down and have a meeting and say like, oh, we want to make an album that has this feeling, let's do that. It just pretty much turns out the way it turns out. But the main thing that I have changed from the previous record, The Nekromant Lives, is the lyrical content. I decided that I was gonna write about stuff that excites me or make me happy rather than stuff that make me sad or angry.
Right.
So I had this like little fear that the album was gonna be maybe a little bit too happy, but it actually turned out that the lyrical subjects that excite me and make me happy fit very well with darker material.
Right.
Yeah, it's like before we have written about like small observations about society in general, I guess. But this time it's more of folklore, myths, legends, Norse mythology a bit. We even have a song about Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. But it's kind of hard. If you're gonna write a song about like Jormungandr, the great serpent from Norse mythology, it's kind of hard to do that in 3.5 minutes with a guitar solo.
Yeah.
You kind of have to stretch it out a bit to get some atmosphere. I suppose the only thing that we changed really was the lyrical content. So I guess that influenced it quite a bit to make it longer. And of course, the Nekromant Lives album was kind of full of shorter, a little bit more rock and rollish type of stuff. And I believe that if you make an album like that, then you have to like make the opposite album of that. Like when Slayer released Rain in Blood and then they released Seasons in the Abyss, that was full of mid-tempo songs from the fast songs. You kind of have to change a bit from record to record to keep it interesting for ourselves, basically.
Yeah. Well, but also the tempos and the lyrics, but also the production, right? Because if you hear the other albums, it's more like this vintage retro rocks vibe, right? And on this album, it sounds like it's recorded in 2021, right?
Yeah,
So, I think it was the idea about also changing this, right?
Oh yeah, that was actually a premeditated choice that we did. We always wanted to make modern sounding doing music. Maybe not in the riff content or the lyrics or the musical content. That is obviously pretty old school, but we always wanted to have a good, a good sound. We never wanted Nekromant to be a retro band. But it just came down to, when we started out, when we recorded the first album, we didn't have any money. We had no idea how to record an album. We had done demos when we were like 15 or something, but we had no clue what we were doing. I mean, we talked about in the band. We talked about this a couple of days ago, that until we had done like 20 gigs, we had not rehearsed sober once. So it was like, and I mean, that's all fun and good, in the beginning, to just have a blast and do everything purely on emotion. But after a while, you kind of feel like, well, we put a lot of time into this, a lot of love basically into this. Why not try to make it as good as we can all the time,
Yeah.
And we always wanted to have a fat sound. Our point of reference for sound has always been, along with many other bands, have been like, we want to sound like the Black Album by Metallica. That's like a point of reference. We don't want to sound exactly like that, but that's the point of reference that we have. Was like, the Black Album sounds cool. Why not try to go in that direction?
Exactly.
So and we decided to I mean, I said before that we didn't have any money for the first album. We don't have any fucking money now either. So, but we kind of decided that we had to put a little bit more into it, both economically and time-wise. I think this was the first album which we went away for and stayed at the studio for 2 weeks and just totally immersed ourselves in the recording.
Yeah.
That's completely true what you're saying. It is a premeditated choice, but we kind of always wanted to go in that direction, and we were, I think, kind of unjustly clumped together with a lot of retro bands just because we released our stuff when that stuff came to be, the whole stoner doom resurgence. We were never really a part of that in my mind, but we happened to start out during the same period, so we got clumped together with that, because all the old reviews we got for the first album, they always said oh, it's a great fuzz sound on the guitar. We never used a fuzz pedal in our lives. We never did anything like that, but we got clumped together with that, and I think that making a more modern sound on this record was an attempt to distance ourselves further from being clumped together with that retro stuff.
Totally cool.
Yeah.
Right. Then you mentioned the first album and this album, and maybe the budget and everything. Actually, this is your debut for Despots Records.
Yeah.
Right. And things has changed a lot since you started and now that you are singing with the Despots, or maybe has changed promotion wise, or?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell since this collaboration we have with Despots is very new still. We haven't done anything with them before. We met the CEO of Despots way back in 2016, and we talked a bit about doing something together then. But we were very much at the beginning of our career then, and we kind of decided that it was not the time. But I mean, so far with Despots, I mean, just to be clear, our previous labels, Transubstance and Ripple, they treated us great. I have absolutely nothing but good things to say about them. But Despots is another animal.
Right.
They are a business label. They want to sell records. They want to get it out there. They want to do promotion. They have deadlines. They have demands. They are a company more than a couple of really, really interested DIY guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that feels great for me. I mean, not to clank down on the work that our previous labels have done in any way, but these guys are more. It's more like this, they get shit done and faster, and as a person, I appreciate that intensely.
Yeah, especially after releasing 3 albums, so you expect a bit more afterwards.
Yeah,
right?
sure. I mean, we have never been about to expect to be successful or liked or hyped or anything like that. We mainly do this for ourselves. But if we're gonna do it for ourselves, why not give ourselves the best opportunities to be able to play better gigs and stuff like that?
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we mentioned before that one of the things that changed on this album, Tuple Haal, it was the lyrics and the subjects. You talk about this. So I was wondering, is it something that is on your belief, that you are a believer of these things, or maybe it's just a subject that attracts you, that maybe you are you don't believe in it, but you like these kind of things? What is the thing here? Are you agnostic? Are you a religious person, a spiritual person?
No, I wouldn't consider myself. I'm definitely not a religious person. I have very high doubts about labeling myself as a spiritual person. Also, I guess I'm an agnostic. I guess everybody is, whether they like it or not, very much. But no, I'm not a believer in any conventional religion or spiritualism. But I do like to dabble with these subjects in my mind, and these legends and folklores and Norse mythology that I'm talking about in the lyrics. I don't intend to convey any message. I don't try to tell a story about this stuff. This is just a feeling that I had. I mean, there may be many mistakes that I've made in my lyrics as far as Norse mythology goes. I'm not a scholar in that subject. We're not Amon Amarth, I'm just trying to accentuate the feel of the song with the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to educate people or get a point across or anything like that. This is just enjoyment and appreciation for heavy metal.
Cool. Right. So I think you back in November, you guys play this mini festival there in Sweden with Luis Lemona and Lycanthropy. And I assume that this was your first show after a long time, right? After all this lockdown. But I think in Sweden the lockdown was not that hard as here in Spain. But there should be some restrictions for sure. So how was it? How did it feel after all this time, like a new era?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it wasn't our first gig after the pandemic, but it was our second. So I mean, pretty much the first. It's of course it's great to get back to playing live. But it's also, I mean, it's scary. We're not as good as we once were in the live con. That's for sure. I mean, no one is right now. I mean, it's hard to get it because before the pandemic we were quite active in the live scene. We played a lot. We played over, I think it's like 150 gigs, something like that. I mean, that's not much compared to huge bands, but in this underground metal scene, it's quite a lot. And we were kind of getting it down to being really, really good live, We were kind of being really sharp. But now, I mean, it's weird, man. It's you get all these feelings that you haven't had for like 7 years. Like, can I stand like this? Do I look cool now? Is this good? No? And then all of a sudden you're playing the wrong notes because you're thinking about other shit.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, it's fine. We do our job, but it's definitely a challenge. But I think that's quite good as well because when you get like 2 years off, for one thing, we kind of plan to have a small hiatus from playing live to record, to write and record this album.
Yeah.
So we kind of fitted our schedule in a way, but we didn't plan to have a 2-year hiatus. But it's kind of good for your ego, I guess, to get knocked down a bit and feel again that you may not be what you think you are live. Still, you have to work at it. It's hard work. It's practice. You have to do it over and over and over again to get good at it. And when you get a 2-year break from it, you have to start again pretty much. So it's scary, but I think it's kind of useful in a way as well.
Good. Talking about shows, I saw that you already have several shows booked in Germany but this is in November next year. Yeah. So we will have to wait another year in order to see that tour, right? I was wondering, what about spring or summer 2022? Well, how do you think it will go? Do you have anything planned, or have you talked with any festival or to do something in the rest of Europe before November 2022?
Well, we have a couple of smaller gigs booked locally in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can always get those, but no, I don't think we have anything. I really don't dare to say too much about this right now. We might have a thing booked in the, I would say, the Iberian Peninsula. Or
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, we may have. I don't want to tell you any more than that because I don't think it's confirmed yet.
All right.
But we may have a thing coming up there.
Yeah.
So that's good. But it's always a problem after this pandemic. It's nothing has been canceled. Everything has been postponed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to get live slots. And I mean, festivals this summer is shot. It's not possible to get any slots there. It's because all the bigger festivals they didn't cancel their bands. They just postponed it to the next year.
Yeah.
So their slots are all filled, and has been for 2 years. So it's very hard for us to get a slot in there. And I mean, that's bad, but it is what it is. You just have to work through it. If we don't book anything now, we will have to wait even longer before we can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to book it and hope for the best. But I would say, since you're from Spain, I would say to your listeners that please follow us on our social media, and we will keep you posted on this thing that I was talking about earlier, hopefully pretty soon.
Cool. Well, hopefully we can see Temple Hall in a proper tour, especially here in Spain, before you release something else. Because this thing happened to a lot of bands last year, for example.
Yeah.
They already have an album in 2019 or 2020. They couldn't present it, and they see themselves having another release already without playing a tour on that album. So I don't know what's the you just released this album, but I don't know what's the idea of Nekromant of waiting another 2 years to release something. I don't know if you have material for something else or.
Well, I'm kind of fucked in the head on that matter because I write everything really fast.
Yeah.
This is, when we released an album like this is my favorite time of being in a band, because that means that I can release that record, drop it from my mind, and I'm allowed to focus on fresh stuff. So, I mean, I would say that 75% of the next album is already done. Oh yeah, I'm very fast in that regard. So we'll see how we do it. I mean, even if we release another album after this one before we can get to proper touring, that might happen. But I mean, that doesn't stop us from playing the Temple of Haal songs live either.
Yeah.
So I don't really see it as we promoting an album on a tour. Of course, that's what we're doing, but we don't. I mean, we're gonna have a release gig now in a couple of weeks in our hometown, and we don't play the whole album or anything like that. We play our normal show with like 3 songs from the new album because people want to hear the old stuff as well.
Yeah.
I hate it when bands release an album and they play just stuff from that album because, sometimes you haven't had a chance to like listen into it and like absorb it as you have the old stuff.
Yeah.
So when you go see a band, I think it was in like 2016 or something when we played the Sweden Rock Festival, I went to see Blind Guardian with Jocke, our drummer. And I mean, I love Blind Guardian, but I'm a nostalgia fan. I'm like pretty much the old stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they started off by playing like 2 or 3 new songs. And they're great songs, but it's kind of boring. I don't want to do that the next month. We have to accommodate everybody there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that. We will play stuff from Temple of Haal even if we release another album in a year or something. Absolutely.